Battletech, The Field is Lost, by Lance Garinci. Winfield's Regiment Command HQ, Felsonville, Winfield, Tamar March, Federated Commonwealth, 20 March 3050. You're going to want to see this, Commandant. Ox fumbled for his glasses. He was slow to wake these days. Bad news when bad news called, and no news that came in the night was ever good. He found a bottle of water and sucked a mouthful into his dry throat. Jenkins was holding out a data stick. Ox snatched it and plugged it into his player. Broadband transmission, emergency frequency, Jenkins yipped. It's from Toland. Toland? Marinetti? The 12th Star Guard held that backwater. One of their regiments, anyway. Over the years, a kind of gentleman's rivalry had developed between the Guard and Winfield's regiment. One Ox maintained just because. But it wasn't Colonel Marinetti who appeared in the grainy holovid image, just some grizzled old mech warrior. Dried blood plastered what could be seen of his face through his neurohelmet's tiny visor. He looked to be on the move, eyes bouncing back and forth between his camera and his instruments. 58 years. Over 40 of them a mech warrior. Things start to go. Hearing from running the autocannon too often. Sight from lasers across the cockpit ferroglass. My back, my knees, my reflexes. That'll be the real killer. One day the other guy's gonna be faster. One day it'll be me that loses the draw. I always knew these things. Always knew my day would come. My daddy died of cancer at 60. His daddy died of a heart attack on his 60th birthday. Grandma gave him too much of a good thing for his birthday, Daddy always said. I'm 58, but I'm not going to die in bed. No, sir, I intend to go out right here, with one hand on the con and the other on the trigger. No weeping wife, no ungrateful brood fighting over my inheritance. Just me and old Bess. So if I always knew this, why's my gut burning? Why's my throat so tight? He waved a disgusted hand at his lap. Why have I pissed myself? Who's this whiner? Marinetti's really scraping the bottom. Get this out of here. Don't go waking General Winfield either, you ass. He almost tossed the data stick and Jenkins' scrawny hide into the night, but Jenkins had long ago developed proven methods of self-preservation, such as reserving important intel for when his skin was on the line. There are other files on there, he said. This came in about 10 hours ago, on a pigeon. That raised Ox's eyebrows. Pigeon was slang for an old-fashioned jump drone, the kind used to send distress signals before the rise of hyperpulse generators. Only the oldest jump ships still carried them, and they were rarely used since deploying a pigeon meant ejecting the jump core, leaving the jumper an immobile coffin. Some of the gods' jump ships date back to the early Star League, he mused. Well, they have one less now. There's an audio-only preface from the captain who launched that pigeon. His ship was under attack. Ox got cold. Jump ships were sacrosanct, man's irreplaceable link to the stars. Only madmen attacked them. The worse. Something had also set off a veteran mech warrior on the ground, and the 12th Star Guard hired no cravens. Ox reached into his nightstand drawer, drew out a bottle and 2 glasses. This felt like a 3-finger chill, so he poured, slammed it back, poured again, and handed 1 glass to Jenkins, and hit play. I pegged a snake tab my number. There may be a lucky Fed. Not a Merrick, though. I can't take those guys seriously. Well, it's none of those. In fact, I don't know who the hell this is, and that's what's got my blood pounding. Word was pirates, but pirates they ain't. No, sir. Not with mechs like these. Banshees are a joke with a bad punchline, but they're damn tough. Nothing takes one apart with a laser at almost 700 meters. Nothing. But this thing did. Blurred battle ROM footage replaced the mech warrior, zooming across a smoky field where a tall, ugly mech strode unchallenged. Seismograph puts it at 95 tons. Same as that hunk of Defiant scrap metal it sent to the great beyond with Captain Folsom still in it. But I swear that same machine also ran down a Commando. 95 tons at 80 kilometers per hour. And it jumps. I don't know what it is, but for the record, I got the hell out of there. Jesus. Ox tossed back his second glass as the mech fired at the camera. You recognize that thing? Jenkins shook his head. The footage continued. They popped in at the nadir and announced themselves, just as brazen as a bull. Who does that? We are the Jade Falcons, they said, and they asked what forces defended the world, as if an honest answer was coming. Colonel Marinetti told him to go jump in the fire. Dropships arrived a few days later, some kind of modified Unions, and out came these Jade Falcons. That's a memory burned into my mind. Mechs so new and shiny you could almost smell the paint. So clean, so fluid, like their actuators hadn't ever known a snag. And weird looking too, all uniform and same-like. Built for function. And to hell with the form that sells so many frames. The image changed again, showing 3 more mechs moving in loose formation. Ox paused and zoomed. He had graduated from the Blackjack Academy, an institute proud of its extensive database of military hardware. He'd studied it long, even had a copy on a data disk somewhere. He'd never seen any of these mechs before. One sort of looked like a Thunderbolt, another vaguely like an anorexic Warhammer. The third was a chicken walker as alien as the name. Jade Falcons? Foregoing camouflage, the invaders wore a bright green parade scheme, with the lead machine sporting a bird's head mural across the torso. Ox zoomed on the T-Bolt doppelganger's arm. That's an insignia. Get Bowist. Already done, Jenkins said. Stop finding reasons for me to keep you around. What'd he find? Nothing. It matches no known Curita, mercenary, or pirate heraldry. Run the Marix, just in case. It is a bird. Strange formations, too. Base 5 deployment. 5, 10, 15. Makes them stronger than a company by 30%. 25%, Jenkins muttered. The man was a perfectionist. Then, get this. They came forward and challenged us, one by one, the way Dracs sometimes do when their Bushido is up. Said they wanted to honor the 12th Star League heritage. By slaughtering us, I suppose. Some of the bigger mechs challenged 2 at once. It wasn't a fight I'm proud of. Were better mech warriors than me in the Guard. Young hotshots, old veterans, boys and girls with a gift for piloting a mech the way an artist is gifted with a brush and an eye for color. They're still back there, those gifted. They're not leaving Toland. I'm probably not either. But maybe this message will. I'm broadcasting wide. Hopefully our Comstar compound will pick it up and... Shit! I've been made! An explosion rocked the mech warrior's cockpit. In the silence of Ox's bunk, it was like a bomb. You don't get to do that to me, you little... He looked into the camera, eyes wide and wild. One more thing. They've got... something with them. I don't know what they are, but they're smaller than a mech and just as mean. They climb. God for... Then came a shriek like tearing metal, and the boom, boom, boom of high-caliber rounds. The image went red. Ox backed it up, played it again. Something was there in the last few frames. Again and again. The 4th time, he paused it just before the end and waved Jenkins closer. What is that? Jenkins squinted. Debris? A piece of whatever shattered his cockpit, I suppose. Bullshit. It's a claw. Some sort of mechanical claw. Look, the shots came from the same direction. They watched the end of the vid in silence. Ox slammed back his glass. Did that acolyte say whether Toland's HPG is responding? It's not. This gone out to regional yet? I've been waiting on your signature. Jenkins held out a pad and Ox scribbled. The comm buzzed. What? he yelled. Sorry to wake you, sir, came a tinny voice. We have unknowns at Zenith. No response to hails. How many? 6 jumpers, fully loaded. The bottle from Ox's nightstand was nearly empty. He furthered its condition. Guess we better wake Winfield. You do it. No way, not without hazard pay. Jenkins held out his glass, and together they slammed one back. It was definitely a 3-finger chill.
Alpha actual to bunker. Alpha in position. Handing it over to you, Ox. Lieutenant General Davis Winfield sounded perfectly calm down there, leading his troops like an old-fashioned shooting general, while Ox sat in the bunker plotting strategy. That was how they played it these days. Ox didn't mind. He hadn't been inside a mech for a decade, ever since the shakes had gotten so bad he couldn't hold the con straight. He deserved a cashiering, but Davis had shunted him sideways into the bunker. Ox couldn't complain. He had a cozy office with a nice mahogany desk and a real gold, nameplate reading Commandant Oscar Mason and an onyx carving of an ox someone had given him. No wet bar, though. Davis had seen to that. The regiment took care of its own, but you'd better be worth taking care of. He felt the shakes now. Not strong, just lurking nearby, waiting. There was a flask in his breast pocket, all discreet-like, just in case. Patting it, he dry-swallowed. Not gonna mess this up, Ox. Not this time. More jumpers had straggled in since the hostiles first arrived. Those at the Zenith were taken by the invaders, but the ones at the Nadir brought news. It wasn't just Toland, but Bone Norman, anywhere, even Barcelona, home to the 17th Sky Rangers. The boys of summer give good, it was always said, but it was winter on Barcelona. Winter for them, maybe for the whole Commonwealth if rumors could be believed. None of the fleeing jumper captains were sticking around. When they heard what lurked at the Zenith point, they spread their sails again. One had even hot-charged to get out early. "We are the Jade Falcons," came the audio-only message 8 days ago, full of bravado and swanky arrogance. "What forces dare defend this world from our steel talons?" Davis had answered him like a good Lyran general, informing him Whitfield's regiment would meet him on the field of war. Then the invaders had requested an LZ. "Someplace our artillery can shell them the rest of the way down," Ox had suggested, but Davis had other ideas. "Let's see what they bring. I'm curious." "You did watch everything on that data stick, didn't you, General?" "Repeatedly, over the past 4 days. I didn't see anything about these Jade Falcons deploying artillery of their own." "Doesn't mean they don't," Ox grumbled. "I did see a lot of one-on-one fights. That smacks of Bushido to me. These Falcons have a code, and Artie ain't part of it. Figure out what it is, and we can exploit it." And Ox had shut up. The enemy were given a clear landing zone 10 clicks from the command bunker. Davis mobilized the regiment and its attendant armor and infantry assets, readied the planetary militia, and they waited. Ox wasn't counting on reinforcements. Precentor Salome apologized fiercely for not being able to send Winfield's report to Regional. Some acolyte had apparently missed a line in his prayers and the HPG was down, but the precentor offered Davis a discount once the machine was running normally again. He could still hear Davis's voice telling him it didn't matter. "This is Winfield, and by God, Winfield's regiment will defend it. That is that. And that is that. Us, and just us, and only us. Winfield is the breadbasket of the Tamar March. Whoever takes it can feed an army indefinitely. And that is that." Ox patted his breast pocket, found his courage was still there, and hoped he could save it for after. The bunker was surprisingly calm. The techs were scared, these low-level products of the Lyran military machine, but they were still too cocky to show it. Fear was there, though, a subtle, rotting stink under their veneer. Ox had smelled it before, during the Fourth War. Liaison and the Altenmarkt militia. The non-coms had remained calm then, too, right up until the first missile hit the HQ. Then it was shit city. Ox leaned over one of the younger girls. What was her name? To get a look at her screen. Why is McPherson deployed like that? I swear that man's a Cretan plant. Tell him to get his lance back in formation, or else he's leading the van. Yes, sir, the girl had said, then got it done. She was almost as good as Jenkins. Ox hated to admit it, but he noticed Jenkins' absence. He didn't exactly miss him, not that he'd ever confessed to, but things did run much smoother when he was around. Now every able-bodied warrior was out on the field, and unlike Ox, Jenkins could still call himself a mech warrior. Damn the man. So Ox had to make do with Clover, that was her name. Just Clover. She was from one of those stupid subcultures where people only used one name. Pretty thing, too, he couldn't help noticing. Nice hourglass. She turned her head, saw him looking, and gave a nervous smile. Ox blinked, felt himself reddening. He was noticing the wrong things. Little green and red blips in the holotank, those were his concern now. So far, all the blips were green, arrayed in a rough circle around the projected LZ. But there would be red soon enough. I've got visual, Clover said. 6 dropships dropped into the holotank. Translucent, fist-sized balls in exact formation. They looked like Christmas baubles, all red and shiny. Into the center of their ring descended a 7th ship, easily twice as large. Ox was as hesitant to brand it an overlord as he was to call the smaller ones unions and intruders, but it was close enough. Good formation, someone muttered. It certainly was. Ox had rarely seen one so tight. The 7 hostiles put down in a ring, with the overlord at the center. Overlapping fields of fire, command ship protected. What more could one ask from an LZ? Then the bay doors rolled up, and centimeter-high battle mechs began trundling out. Ready when you are, Ox, Davis said. Ox's focus dropped over him like a cloak, banishing the shakes and putting the steel back in his spine. Everything was patterns, and when you saw them, you owned them. Ox was man enough to admit he was a mediocre mech warrior, but his gift for seeing patterns had earned a bit of bragging. Right now, he liked what he saw. Bravo Battalion, send a company to Grid 2-6. Charlie, loosen formation and deploy into 5-2. Alpha, spread out to the northeast until you link with Charlie. We've nearly got their LZ encircled. We'll close the loop, then tighten it. Drive them back, maybe even overrun them and capture a nice new Union or two. He called up a projected range bubble for the enemy dropships. Bravo, not so eager. You're getting under their guns. Pull back a half click and get into 2-6 already. The regiment complied. 3 green amoebas stretching arms towards each other to encircle and swallow the invaders. Hauptmann Johns is requesting orders, sir, a tech said. Tell her to hold as long as her boys have fuel. Overlapping fields of fire classified any run by Winfield's fighters as suicide. Prioritize targets of opportunity as they rise. That'll be your call, Stent, Jenkins whispered in his head. Stent. Keep them alive, Lieutenant, or I'll send you out there with a rifle. Clover, give me a count on hostiles. Red reflected in her eyes. 45, all battle mechs. The droppers can't have deployed their full complement, but nothing else is emerging. Why would they be holding back? Ox scratched his stubbly cheeks. Tell Hauptmann Ross to let Cargill run. Have him get as close as he can to those droppers. I want a visual right into their holds if I can get it. Cargill piloted the regiment's lone Ost scout, and no finer a recon platform could be found. Within moments, Ox had a clear image of the advancing mechs as mech warrior Cargill sailed by them at the limit of LRM range. The invading mech's sameness was eerie. He counted several different frames with identical arms, and some with identical leg assemblies, even though Cargill's sensors tagged them at varying masses. Ox recognized the same 4 chassis from 12th data and felt his neck skin crawl. For all he knew, it was the very same machines, come to haunt Winfield. Some seemed to eye the Ostscout, but ultimately ignored it. He's under the dropper's range bubble, but they're not firing, Clover said. He's too fast, someone else replied. They're not wasting ammo on something they can't hit. No, Ox dialed up the resolution, watched a gun turret track the Ostscout. They're not shooting because they don't see him as a threat. They want us to see. They're showing off. Bunker to Alpha Actual. Go ahead. These guys have one severe case of arrogance, General. Those mechs aren't marching, they're strutting at you like peacocks. Arrogance, Ox? Or confidence? One's worse than the other, Davis sighed. Whichever it is, let's make it a fatal case. Are we in position? Bravo had finally gotten into 2-6, and most of the advancing Falcons were out from under their dropship's guns. Good as it's going to get. Time to welcome them to Winfield. He flipped to broadband. Charlie, Battalion, they don't seem to have noticed you yet. Stay in those trees until I say otherwise. Alpha and Bravo, you are free to engage the enemy. These are the guys who shot your dog, defiled your sister, and called your mama a whore. Go knock their teeth out. Alpha and Bravo complied, and Ox sat back to wait for the patterns to roll in. How did the enemy handle charges? Feints? A target in their rear? Did they rely on missiles, ballistics, or energy weapons? What formations did they prefer? And most importantly, which mech did the orders seem to be coming from? He steepled his fingers, waiting for it all to emerge. Bunker to Bravo Actual, he radioed. Lawson, your boys are closest. Engage those 5 to your southeast. Don't baby them. Send a full company. And I want visual from it all. Roger, Bunker. McPherson's group going in. A dozen live feeds appeared in the holotank, giving Ox a choice of who he wanted to see die in real time. An enemy mech fired. He watched the same pair of lasers flash from 12 viewpoints, then one went to fuzz. Chatter immediately filled the comm. Danton is down. No ejection. 1,200 meters. A Marauder, I think? Or a catapult? With arms? Missiles coming. Evasive maneuvers, and keep charging. The Winfield mechs closed. Ox split his attention between the live feeds and the big picture floating in the holotank. The little mechs danced, and the lights began to blink out. Green lights. 1, 2, 3. Something in him was screaming, but it was buried deep. Here and now he needed to be detached, not think of those blips as people he lifted a cup with. They were pawns on his chessboard. Just little green pawns. And they were vanishing. Finally, a red went out. Cheers on the chatter. Another, then a third. Then it was only green in that corner of the map. 5 green dots, where once there had been 12. Jesus, Ox muttered. So much for charging. Tactics would have to adapt. As per usual, time passed far too quickly. Ox had to bellow for coffee when he realized 2 hours had vanished. Jenkins would have had it in his hand an hour ago. Much of what went on in the holotank was feints and probing as Winfield felt out the attackers. The Jade Falcons saw no need to probe. They rushed headlong towards whichever Winfield mech presented itself, blasting with lasers, missiles, and some weird gun that shot metal slugs at incredible velocity. The invaders' guns outranged his, so Ox kept his mechs in the trees or beyond the rolling hills. Some of them had a modified machine gun that shot down incoming missiles, so he ordered those destroyed with PPCs and autocannon fire. Winfield's numerical advantage seemed to mean nothing. Every time a red light winked out, it took 2 or more green ones with it, and Ox's throat itched for relief. Single combat reigned among the Falcons. Each mech picked out an opponent and pursued him until one or the other was down. When Winfield mechs concentrated their fire, the Falcons responded in kind. But once the offenders were destroyed, it was back to dueling. The sheer power of their weapons clenched Ox's bowels. One mech pegged at 35 tons obliterated a Winfield Warhammer. Sure, the whammy was a cast-off from the Third Succession War that walked with a permanent limp and bled coolant from every joint, but it was still a Warhammer. That little mech with the broad hood answered its PPCs, and each shot sheared off an arm. Damage analysis said those PPCs hit with approximately 50% more kinetic energy than they should have. Who the hell are these guys? The damage was beginning to show. Alpha and Bravo were reporting almost 30% casualties. Charlie lurked in reserve, and though Commandant Cummings had thrice requested permission to engage, Ox held that advantage close. It was his only one. Ox pulled off his glasses and rubbed that damned spot where they pinched the bridge of his nose. An ace. I need an ace. Sir? Clover asked. An ace in the hole. Don't have one hiding anywhere, do you? Well, she bit her lip. Not an ace, but maybe a jack? The enemy appears to be ignoring our armor and infantry. Eh? How so? They're focusing on our mechs. I've had at least 4 tank crews report an enemy mech passing up a shot at them, unless they fired first. Bugger all. Really? Ox called up a tally of the green dots representing his tanks and infantry and found them to be nearly 100% intact. Damn his mech warrior bias. He discounted his conventional assets. Greater tacticians had died for such neglect. We can use this. Hot damn, we can use this. Bunker to all commands. The enemy is reluctant to attack armor and PBIs. Use them like an anvil and smash the bastards. Clutching his third cup of coffee, he sat back to watch it unfold. Little green mechs baited little red ones into a sea of tanks and fools, which surrounded and consumed them like white blood cells on an infection. The reds winked out, but left fewer and fewer greens behind each time. With more than half their number extinguished, the reds began to regroup, carefully herded into a corner of grid 5-3, right where Ox wanted them. He smiled. Finally, bunker to all commands. Bravo, disengage and pay a visit to the enemy LZ. I want a few new unions on our tarmac. Kindly go and get some for me. Alpha, hold position and act like an immovable object. Charlie Actual, do me a favor. Charge. 3 dozen green mechs emerged from the holographic trees, pouring south from grid 5-2 like a waterfall attended by hovercraft and a pile of tanks and infantry. The red swarm halted so suddenly that some of the trailing mechs ran into their leaders. Missiles arced, lasers flashed, and the Falcons turned back, right into the guns of Alpha. Cheers rang in the bunker. Ox hoisted his cup with the rest of them. Coffee. See, Ox, you've still got it. His mechs might walk with a permanent stagger, but he could still manage a good dust-up. He could see the patterns, position his pieces, and drop his ace when it mattered. But the Falcons had an ace of their own. Hostiles! Clover pressed a hand to one ear over the cheers. The intruders are departing something. Ox leaned over her, the holotank lighting every wrinkle of his face. They've got something. His hands began to tremble. What the hell am I looking at? Unidentified. The warbook keeps pegging them as infantry, but they're too big, moving too fast. Jesus, how many of them are there? Ox rasped. The new hostiles oozed like a river of blood from their dropships. Wherever they met Bravo's line of advance, green lights winked out. Chatter filled the comm, sounding like a death knell. Too big to be Gropos, too small to be mechs. Get me a feed. God damn it, somebody get me a feed. Someone delivered. It was a bouncy image as the mech warrior ran away, but it gave Ox enough to go on. Freeze and zoom. Not that part. Find me a frame that isn't blurry. Ox stared, uncomprehending. It wasn't a mech, but it wasn't a man either. It had 2 legs, 2 arms, and something of a head on which a glaring green falcon perched in painted glory. What it most resembled was a suit of armor, but if it was, then the man inside it would have to be a giant. The suit was over 3 meters tall, and save for a few freaks, no one reached such a height. Ox unpaused in time to see the thing fire a missile from its back, and that wasn't its only weapon. The right arm ended in a laser muzzle, and the left, a claw. Ox remembered the dead mech warrior from the holovid message that had started this whole shitstorm. 3 fingers with a submachine gun slung underneath. It was the same. They climb, the mech warrior had uttered before God called him home. Bravo, pull back, Ox shouted over the comm. Do not engage the new hostiles at close range. Repeat, do not... But it was too late. The little monstrosities caught Bravo's mechs in their swarm, and what a swarm it was. Ox's live feed showed him mechs crawling with the bastards, like helpless cattle torn apart by blood limpets. Wherever they landed on a Winfield mech, those lasers dug into its armored skin. Those claws tore chunks away and reached in to rip loose the guts. He watched a Centurion swat feebly at the monstrosity ripping open its LRM launcher, saw the thing hit the ground, rise, and reattach itself to the mech's knee like an obstinate leech. Another one climbed a shoulder and peeled off the Centurion's face. The mech toppled over, the little beasts jumping free just in time to deny it the final revenge of crushing them in death. Ox felt a hole inside. Jenkins piloted a Centurion. His other live feeds, the ones that didn't fuzz out, played similar movies. Most of Bravo's slower machines were overrun, and when a few faster Falcon mechs broke through Bravo's failing line to join their tiny cousins, the bastards swarmed them too, but not to kill. The Falcon mechs acted as taxis, depositing their cargo close to Winfield's faster machines. All pretense of dueling was gone, washed away by Charlie's charge. The Falcons laid on the firepower indiscriminately, and everywhere their lasers landed, a Winfield mech fell.
"Keep them split!"
Ox had to clear his throat to keep his voice from breaking. "Don't let their mechs get through Alpha and Bravo's lines." His hands worked a symphony inside the holotank. "Where is O'Halloran's company? Send it to plug the line. Keep this lance from breaking through." "O'Halloran is out of commission, sir," Clover said. "She was moving to reinforce a breach, but the enemy overran her. They hit her company and just kept going. The survivors have regrouped with Hauptmann Kurtz."
"How many does that give Kurtz now?"
Clover swallowed. 7. 7. From 24. 2 companies of mechs reduced to half of 1. Ox took a good, hard look. Charlie was mostly intact, but Alpha was a battalion in name only, and Bravo. Ox looked down at his hands, willing them to be still. "Bunker to Alpha Actual. Davis, drop back and join the ranks with Charlie. Let the Falcons through. Stent, get Johns and the boys in there. Tell her to cover Alpha's retreat and try to dig out what's left of Bravo." Lieutenant Stent looked up, gray-faced. "Johns is gone, sir." Ox looked around him. "What do you mean, gone?" "I shot down, sir. I had John strafed to cover Alpha, and the Falcons shot them down." "The dropships?" "No, sir. The mechs. They returned fire on our second pass. Johns is gone. They're all gone." Stent looked on the verge of tears. Ox stared into the holotank, seeing little. "They were toying with us. The whole time, just playing at war. Now it's real." "Larson is down." Clover pressed her earpiece tight, eyes wide as they sought Ox. "Bravo Actual is down." Less than a company of green Bravo mechs remained, ringing their commander's fallen awesome. Micah's company was fastest, and mostly intact. "Charlie Actual. Cummings, send Micah's boys in to reinforce Bravo's position. Then link with your armor and turn north. You're going to flank them." "Belay that." Davis sounded like he hadn't slept in a week. "Bravo, fall back. Alpha and Charlie will cover. It's over, Ox. We can't take them." "What? No. General, we can salvage this. Those little buggers don't have much range, and the mechs are hurt bad. Regroup in Grid 5-3, then they'll have us in one place. A nice little package deal for when that Overlord dumps its load." Ox looked at the red lump at the center of the enemy LZ. Its doors remained closed, but did the Falcons conceal yet another battalion in its hold? Like a dirigible losing its gas, Ox's shoulders began to slump. A bitter emptiness spread from his gut, filling the back of his scratchy throat. So quickly had it all gone wrong. Luck was no lady, not today. "You did good, Ox," Davis said, "but I can't let anybody else die today. You have my permission to signal the bunker's surrender." "Understood, General." Permission, not order. There was a world of difference between the two, and Ox loved his old friend all the more for it. He nodded slowly to Clover, and she got it done. "What about you, sir?" he asked Davis. "We're disengaging. The Commonwealth will need us elsewhere." "We're abandoning Winfield?" someone asked. Dumb silence fell over the bunker. Clover turned questioning eyes to Ox, but he had no answers for her. In one flip of a dropship's door, his world had unraveled. He had interpreted the patterns to read victory, but these invaders read it quite differently. Ox broadened his vision now, saw an inner sphere where veteran units like Winfield's regiment were dismantled in a matter of hours by a force half their size. The pattern did not spell victory. Davis broadcast on General. "This is General Winfield. To all defenders of the world that bears my name, this is the most sickening order I've ever had to give, and one that'll haunt me forever. The field is lost. All forces ought to make for their dropships." His weariness drove home the words. The field is lost. 1,000 outraged voices filled the comm, questioning, yelling, not understanding why they were being told to abandon their homes and families. Davis shouted them all down. "We cannot beat these Jade Falcons. We can't. And if my regiment, the best troops on this side of the sphere, can't do it, I don't know who can. It's about more than us and our one world. Toland, here, Barcelona have all fallen. The Commonwealth is under attack, and we're going to need every gun. We stay here and die, or we live to fight again tomorrow. These invaders will have Winfield, but we'll get it back, I promise. Now get to your droppers. Once in the sky, it's every ship for herself. Tell the jumper captains not to wait. We need to get the word out. All surviving forces regroup at Butler. Godspeed to you all." "Should I sound evacuation?" Clover said, with trembling lips. "There's no time." Ox wiped at his clean glasses. "God, the shakes. We stay behind. There'll be militia. There'll be resistance. That's our job until Davis and the others come home. But shouldn't we—" "No, damn it." Ox called up a star map, zoomed in on local systems. "Toland. Winfield." One fat finger traced a line down through the two worlds and onto a third. "What's that say, Corporal?" Trail 1. Trail 1. I thought so." He called up the world's data, including defenders. "And what's that say?" 12th Donegal Guard. "Oh!" "Yeah. Oh. We tie them up for as long as we can. Every Falcon here is one less on Victor's doorstep." How the hell had he become responsible for the safety of the Archon's heir? The flask in his pocket was so heavy, he needed to lighten it, just a bit. Clover put a finger to her ear. "I have a message from the enemy Star, Colonel? She's incoming to accept our surrender." Silence fell. Some of the younger techs seemed close to tears. Others just stared into their monitors. "It happens," Ox said, by way of apology and comfort. "You don't win them all. This time we lose, next time we won't. General Winfield and the others will be back, and when they come, they'll have friends here waiting for them. For now, we surrender. We behave. We show respect, because that's the way it's done. Remember this. Remember how it feels to lose, so that when the day comes to fight again, you'll do that much better, kick the other guy that much harder, make him the one to kneel with bile in his throat. There'll be a next time, people. Be strong and be ready." In the holotank, a group of red blips approached the bunker. Ox zoomed. It was one of the Thunderbolt knockoffs, accompanied by a delegation of infantry transports that had debarked one of the Falcon's dropships. They reached the bunker too soon. When the base gates opened, the guns remained silent. The new lords of Winfield came home. Ox took his courage from his pocket and looked at it. Outside, Winfield's new master was debarking from her mech. Fumes wouldn't rise from her breath. Willing the shakes away, he pocketed the flask. Damn, this was going to be hard. There came a banging on the door that made the techies jump. A few cried out, and a few more drew sidearms. Ox straightened his uniform. "Stand down." He had to wave a few of the more zealous idiots back. "Stand down, you dim-witted." The door opened, and a giant stepped into the room. The man had to duck to get in, and once over the threshold, he kept coming and coming and coming. There was so much of him that surely the bunker would burst before he was inside. His head scraped the ceiling, and when he took in a breath, there was no air left for Ox. He was followed by a woman just as broad and muscled as her companion. No petite hourglass for this one. Just an assault rifle, Ox would need a forklift to move. Now Ox knew. It was armor that had undone his defenses. The armor of the gods, and gods wore it. Giant gods with green eyes, green feathers. "Star Colonel Diane Anu," the giant announced in a voice like grinding stone. Nearly lost between the two behemoths came a woman clad in a cooling vest and a smug smile. "Gee, she's a kid. Can't be 30. Ox looked closer. They were all kids. Even the scarred, hard-eyed giants dripped youth, though theirs came with a flavor of offended hurt. They were soldiers who had known too much defeat. It put a deep unease in Ox's gut. Who had made them like this? What foe had tempered these Jade Falcons? What holocaust had put such steel into warriors so young? Another thought turned his blood to ice. How close on their heels was that foe? Ox stepped forward and saluted. Enemy or not, she was a colonel. "Commandant Oscar Mason of Winfield's regiment. This base and its remaining facilities are yours, sir." That cost him something to say, something that might never grow back. Still more needed to be said, and it was him that had to get it out. "Our people are retreating. I trust you'll let them? They're good soldiers. I'd hate to see them slaughtered." Something Ox said caused the girl to grimace, but she nodded all the same. "No honor is lost retreating before a superior foe. We have a word for it. Hegira. Do not look so dour, Commandant. Defeat only brings shame when one fails to fight to their fullest, and your people fought bravely and surprisingly well. Your comrades are free to go." She swept a hand in a broad gesture, looking around the room. "Go to the Commonwealth and the Combine, to the League and the Suns. Tell them to spread the word far and wide. We are Jade Falcon. We are coming." No amount of liquid courage would ever warm the chill that ran up Ox's spine, but damn him, he'd try. He pulled out his flask. "Star Colonel, perhaps you'll join me for a drink? God knows I'll need one." "Certainly." Diane Anu put an arm around Ox's shoulders and smiled as if they were old friends. "I am told it was you who oversaw your defense. It was a fine combination of strategies, which may have worked against a wolf or a ghost bear, but we are Jade Falcon. All of us. Tell me, have you ever heard the term bondsman?" And